Good evening. We have a skinnier crowd. Does anybody know why? They weren't serving Corona out there. First and foremost, I want to thank Mother Nature. It's nice to have the moisture. Apparently, we're supposed to have it for the next bunch of days. So good evening. I'm Jim Watkins. Everybody generally knows that. This is our 20th one of these things in 2020. Do you know where this is headed? So 20 years ago, we had 20/20 vision, right? And we knew this was going to be good. Not. That said, we have been doing it for 20 years. We're proud to have done it for that long. And I hope the information that we provide tonight is as good as it has been, or will be as good as it has been in the past. So John and I get more credit than we deserve. We have a group of now 40 brokers and an incredible staff, and they're actually the ones that are the Wells group. So Leanne, if you could bring up the lights, and if all you guys could stand up, that'd be great. So this is the Wells group, and so we're going to relive last year a little bit. A year and a couple of months ago, we moved to our new location, 1130 Main. We were just getting settled in. I tried to tell you we were settled last year. At this time, we weren't, but we are now. So if you haven't been by, come down and see us. We've got a great facility, and we would love to show it off to you. Along with the brokers, there's a group of companies that are on either side of the screen here that really have helped us put this together, both from a support standpoint, and they all kind of wrote a check for us, too. So in no particular order, TBK Bank, the Bank of Colorado, Alpine Bank, Wells Fargo Home Mortgage, American Ag Credit, Central Bank, the Malone team, Highlands Residential Mortgage, Bank of the San Juans. Thank you guys so very much. We really, really appreciate you being a part of this. Leanne, are you back there? Leanne is back there with all the buttons. We couldn't do this without Leanne and her staff here at the concert hall. I wish I had a spotlight to turn on you, so thank you so much. And Preston, you're here. You're going to film this. It's going to be up online sometime in the morning, so you'll be able to take a look at all the slides, or if you didn't get enough of me tonight, you can watch me again. That'll start in the morning. Let's see. Everything is copyrighted. I should have this memorized after 20 years, but I don't. So if you want some of this information or you want to talk to somebody, Bob is always available. All of us at the Wells Group would be happy to sit down and talk to you. But Bob has done this for the last somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 years, and we sure couldn't do it without him. So thank you, Bob. So the deal with this is you don't necessarily need to agree with us. All the information that we're putting out there, we think we're right. No, we know we're right, but you might not think we're right. It's to stimulate conversation. So in the light of all of the political stuff where somebody lives on this side and somebody lives on this side, that's not what this is about. If you want to have a conversation, come have a conversation with us. We're happy to hear what you have to say, and maybe we'll learn something that we don't know. So, and Bob told me that we have to tell everybody to turn off their telephones, right? We were going to put them in a basket upstairs, but then we thought coronavirus would spread. So, without further ado, it is my extreme pleasure this year to introduce my good friend and my partner, John Wells. We're really, really happy to see him this year. So there you have it, and there we are.
Yes, sir. Thanks again, of course, for all our staff and brokers being here, but thank you for making it out here. Besides being a blustery evening, There's certainly other reasons people are deciding not to go into public gatherings, but we appreciate you being brave and, quite honestly, realistic. You know, I mean, this is the healthiest group I've seen here ever. The people that weren't healthy didn't come, and they can see this online, okay? A couple things. When you have questions about anything that's presented tonight from myself or Bob, you have the ability to catch one of our 40-plus brokers, or Jim, or Bob, or I, after the presentation, or the next day or two. That's what we're here for. We want to make sure that we can explain everything to you if you didn't feel it needs to be explained, or that we can share more information with you, because believe me, if you want to ask me about the real estate information, you could have a few hours and we could get partway through it. So we're going to be a little more brief today. Let's just talk about what we predicted last year. We always do 10 predictions, or have for quite a few years. And in this particular case, we're just going to hit 4 of those. We talked about vacation rentals and RV usage being an impact to hotel occupancy in 2019. That didn't happen to the degree that we expected it. Now, if we look back, it's always 20/20 vision in the rearview mirror, and that is we were comparing to 18 maybe to 19. 18, we had the 416 fire, we had the drought, we had less visitors. But in total, you know, with the millennials buying more and more RVs and taking that as a vacation option, that grew. Vacation rentals, and Bob can share with you, but I think there's over 1,000 vacation rental units in La Plata County and City of Durango. There's a lot of occupancy there, yet the hotel occupancy did not go down substantially. 2020, second half, and 21, as Bob will talk about, probably a different story with the amount of rooms coming online soon. Second home, vacation home, and retirement buyers would increase. They did. Now, we'll be the first to tell you that we cannot really give you a hard statistic on this for the whole market, but we can tell you within the Wells Group, as the Wells Group is typically and traditionally, and last year, again, sold over 30% of the residential product in La Plata County. We do study that data very closely, and it has grown, and we believe it will continue to grow, which we'll talk about in a moment. Demand for senior housing would increase. This really should say demand for senior housing product would increase. So that's really what I think I meant when I wrote this. It did not. We didn't see any developers really take that big step into providing senior housing. And we're not talking just about nursing homes, we're not talking about assisted living, we're talking about senior homes where senior housing in regards to a senior community, maybe there's activities, opportunities. This is growing. You can go to Farmington, New Mexico, and there's 2 or 3 products down there that have been built in the last few years, just as an example. And with our growing baby boomer age and some traditionalists still here, we do think a lot of them want to age in place, be close to the family members and their friends here. And we believe that, you know, just jumping into what we'll think this year, we hopefully will see this happen. But last year it didn't happen. We did predict that the economic cycle would stay about the same. We wouldn't see a downturn. That's true. Again, we're in a whole new world, 2020, especially with what's happened in the last 4 or 5 weeks. And we probably are going to see some economic impact from that in the future. But for our prediction last year, the economy stayed pretty steady in La Plata County and the nation for that matter. So let's just jump into, before I jump into the predictions, I'll tell you this. I did find a study that was done, 7 presidential election cycles, and they studied what was the impact in the United States real estate market. And interestingly, what they found was there was none. Virtually no difference in amount of product absorbed or sold or developed from year to year in an election year. Looking at that. So, you know, again, the one constant is change. So maybe 2020 would be a little different, but we don't think so. So let's just go to this. Again, we put these slides together weeks ago, and at that time, coronavirus was down on our list. It was off the list for a while, then it got on the list. But let me just talk about the blessing we have living in Southwest Colorado. Here in southwest Colorado, there's 33 people per square mile in La Plata County. Now, we know we have a lot of Forest Service lands, we have BLM, we have Southern Ute tribal lands. We understand that, but it's 33. Now, Los Angeles County, not the city of Los Angeles, Los Angeles County, and they do have some open space and parks and, of course, beach, et cetera, but they're much denser. I'm not making a direct comparison. 7,000 people per square mile. So let's say somebody wants to take a vacation this year, and they go, do we go where there's already 7,000 people plus millions of visitors, or do we go to the clean air, the bright, clear skies, and the open space in southwest Colorado? Plus, by the way, our fuel prices are a lot less. We're going to drive and not fly, and guess where our visitors come from? They drive mostly Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and the Front Range. So we actually think that we will see a good tourist season because of where we live. Cost of construction. This is the broken record slide, but we have to talk about it. Bob will do it in more detail. This is the impact not just to affordable housing, but to the individuals maybe even ready to build that custom home. They've secured the land, they've met with their architect, they met with their contractor, and now they get the bids in, and they find out that not just the materials but labor, but the material costs continue to increase to a point that that's the uncontrollable part of construction. So some of these people delay the construction of their custom homes. Some builders decide not to do a project at this time because to hit a price point of a particular sector of our market, it's going to be difficult. So this is an impact to the economy, and not much we can do about it other than to realize it, continuing and going forward. Natural gas industry, we thought 2 years ago the carnage was over, the decline in employment was over. There was a little more reduction in employment with BP, which is our remaining employer other than the Southern Ute tribal entities, but not much. I have talked to John Mummery, who manages the San Juan Basin assets for BP Amoco. And as you saw in the paper today, that transaction happened a few days ago to IKAV, which is a German company. And they're retaining BP to run that operation through this year. And in 2021, the good news of this is they will have to hire their own back of the house and accounting divisions, because those are currently done in BP's other offices, either in Houston or Dallas, or Denver, excuse me. So we will see some job growth possibly in 2021, but at this moment, they're going to retain everyone that BP has hired today, so we don't have any loss, and that's a very strong positive for our economy. Land sales will increase in numbers of transactions. Bob's got some great data, so pay attention. You'll know exactly what we're talking about. But land sales, we believe, are increasing this year. I looked up yesterday, year to date, not much time there, and it's the winter, but the same number of transactions actually almost to the number last year to this year, and last year we had a big winter. So we say, well, why is it not growing more? The first few months are not necessarily land selling months. People don't necessarily take our brokers out and look at a piece of property and say, Max, what's this look like without a couple feet of snow on it, or with trees leafed out? So they probably wait. But builders do buy in the early part of the season to get their inventory, to get plans, to get permits, so they're ready to build come spring. But our brokers in this room are showing much, much more land. I know the Overlook at Edgemont Highlands had 7 or 8 sales closings just yesterday in one day. They really are seeing a great demand there. So we do believe land sales are going to increase. This is partly because the inventory of some of our housing is getting thinner and thinner. It's not that the inventory is totally down. Bob will share that with you. But in certain sectors, certain types of inventory are becoming very scarce. Millennial buyers, I put the age in there because I'm not a millennial, so I can't remember their age. But 22 to 37, this is going to be a substantial growth of real estate sales in the nation, but certainly La Plata County. Why? Well, a lot of these millennials have waited to buy. They didn't buy like a traditionalist or a baby boomer as soon as they had scraped enough quarters out of the couch buying that first house. A lot of these millennials have saved money, a novel idea. They have savings. And in addition, they do have family support a lot of the times. And they are going into the housing market now in their 30s, where we look back 30, 40 years ago is probably more in the 20s. So the millennials in our area, which we have quite a few of, are buying. I mean, in fact, the La Plata County, let me think about this. The 75% of our population is between 18 and 64 years old. So we're throwing the children out, throwing the retired folks out. That's a big heart of our buyer public. We didn't throw them out, but we excluded them. So we're halfway through. Market competition. Aging homes will need to be updated. Talking about the oil and gas industry, there was a boom in the 50s and 60s. Crestview, Riverview, for example. Those are two areas that were developed substantially because of the demand of housing, because of the energy industry in the San Juan Basin. How old are those houses? 60 years old, 65 years old. Hard to believe. And yet, some of them have been upgraded and updated, but some haven't. Buyers today don't necessarily want to get involved with a house where they have to look at replacing the heating system, the plumbing system, the roof, et cetera, et cetera. They're going to want it redecorated, and they want it modernized. And this goes right through all inventory. If we have a home in the avenues downtown that's 100 years old, they're looking for the same thing for the most part. The do-it-yourselfers aren't here like they used to be. And why? Well, it's just a lot nicer to have a move-in ready home. And also, there's a lot of TV shows that might be influencing some of these people about home improvements. Interest rates, well, again, they were great 3-4 weeks ago when we put these slides together. What are they today? They're exceptional. In fact, most of our sponsors up here have, in fact, all of them, I believe, have home mortgage departments. I can tell you, you can ask any of them after this presentation, and they will tell you that they are extremely busy, not just with new purchases, but with refinances, because these rates are ultra low. Ultra low. This is a great silver lining for a real estate market, and it's a gift for us, especially with all of the things going on worldwide right now. Investors. Well, the low rates, of course, are very attractive for investors because an investor buys for what reason? Rate of return. And at lower interest rates, to buy an asset, they're going to get a better return. The other reason we feel that investors are going to be, well, by the way, the first 2 months have just been exceptional in number of closings that we've noticed in investment in commercial property. But we believe this is going to continue because these low interest rates, but in addition to the low interest rates, we have a lot of competition in metropolitan areas for investment-type product. Denver, for example. Some people are buying apartment buildings in Denver with a 3% return to even under a 5% return. In Durango, most of our cap rates on investment properties are much more attractive than that. So a better rate of return as an attractive not just to our local regional buyers, but out-of-area buyers. Attainable and affordable housing remains an issue. This is a broken record thing again, but let's just talk about this. It's become more and more in focus because in town, Bob will share with you, the in-town median price is about $500,000. The county, I think, is about $440,000, the entire county. And when you figure what the cost is of ownership of that home with the mortgage, it is really difficult for a good percentage of our population to reach that. In fact, 42% of our population cannot buy homes in La Plata County. That, by the way, is a benefit to those investors who add multifamily or apartments. In fact, you know, the apartments were built at the Rocket Drive-In site. 196 units are virtually full. The Confluence apartments that the Southern Ute Tribe Growth Fund developed in Three Springs, virtually full. Two of the larger developments, virtually full, and both newer into the market. So it shows you that there is a demand for this, for the good and the bad. And the good is we need it, the housing, and it's there. The bad news is a lot of those people aren't in a position where they can buy. We believe that the lead is going to be from the largest employers to start acting on their own to create housing. That's Durango 9R, Fort Lewis College, the Growth Fund in Southern Ute Tribe, and Mercy Hospital. The Fort Lewis College and 9R have some residual extra lands they could actually start doing such construction on, but just real quickly to let you know, why is it affordable? It's affordable because if the Fort Lewis, let's say, as an example, built housing on some of its land up here on the Mesa for their faculty and staff and loaded that price with no land value, that's affordable. Because the land is very expensive in regards to development. So that brings it to a price point where they can attract great top-line employees, they can retain employees, and give those people a start so they can build some equity and then go buy their own home. So we do think that these companies will get involved in this process. The market will pay similar level. Now, we'd like to have a lot of, fireworks go off, big prediction. This seems like, well, that's not very exciting, but it is. Because last year was a good year. We had a good, robust market last year. So being about the same is not bad, especially with the conditions that I've expressed here in the last few minutes. But, we have vacation retirement and second home growth that we continually will see. We have some of the land growth that we're going to see, land sales. And lo and behold, Wallet Hub did a study that just came out last week that says that the number 2 retirement state in the nation is Colorado. Who would have thought? Florida, of course, but what about the Carolinas? What about the Sun Belt? What about Arizona? What about California, Nevada? We're number 2. So that is very impressive when we're in a different climate. We're a 4-season climate in the entire state, and we're number 2. So we do expect that to continue to bring people to our area. But at the same time, when Jim and I started, we saw people sell their house and buy another home every 5, 6, 7 years. Their family was growing, their family was shrinking. They wanted a home in the country, they wanted a home in town. 5 to 7 years. Well, 13 years is the average right now nationally, 13 years. It's almost double. So we don't see that exchange of homes where people are moving as much internally. They may be remodeling, they may be upgrading, they may be adding on to their current home. So that's an impact. Let me just close out here and just tell you that we see opportunities. This is kind of what we didn't put this on a slide, but North County, for example, there's a lot of people that are attracted to North County or let's say Vicedo for that vacation second home as an example. And we've seen strong demand there and low inventory. So we see an opportunity in those areas. Senior housing, I really like to see that product come online to let people age in place and keep families connected in our community. And of course, always entry level. One other thing we'll share, it's very exciting to see. I saw the city attorney here anyway, and the city and county both are now talking about being very open to tax increment financing and urban development. What does that mean? That means the ability to create some financing to grow jobs, to grow a business park, for example, to contribute to a business park with those financing opportunities, and see us diversify our job base, which we think is really important to the health of the community. Again, you can ask any of the brokers we have here after this presentation or ourselves anything about this. At this point, I'd like to introduce a good friend of ours that from the very beginning at the Durango Arts Center with a slide projector. Who doesn't know what a slide projector is up there? A few of you. Started with the first real estate presentation. And Bob is just a wealth of knowledge, been a good friend of ours forever. And we're just really glad to have him keep on doing this after 19 years, for his 20th year. Please welcome Bob Allen.
So I brought both these guys up here, and we've been doing this for 20 years. And as John just said, the first time I did this was with acetates, overhead slide projector down at the Arts Center. And this doesn't happen by magic. It happens very unselfishly because these two guys have put a lot of care into the local industry, and doing what we do here is really important. So I owe a great debt of gratitude to these two guys for doing this. Let me tell you a quick story.
No, Bob.
We continue to talk about affordable and attainable housing. And I met these two guys probably back in the early 80s. We sat down at a table, probably at Old Timers. And they came to me and they had plans to meet some of that need. They were talking about doing a mobile home park on a piece of ground that's still there. It's vacant, still available for that mobile home park that they talked about. So they've been talking about addressing some of the problems and issues, not just being realtors, but addressing the real needs in this community since they've been in the business. And this is one of the needs that they've been addressing, and I just wanted to say thanks. All right. My information is sterile. It won't get you sick. This is sort of a table of contents of what I'm going to talk about tonight. I'm going to start out with what happened in 2019. I'm going to go with, see what the primary economic forces are that drive demand for real estate. We're going to talk about supply and demand. We're going to talk about some of the regional influences. We're going to talk about local construction costs and building permits, and then I'm going to wind it up with what to expect in 2020. So what happened in 2019? From my perspective, local real estate market remained pretty healthy. Started out a little slow. We've had, because our interest rates were high, had some softness, and particularly in the vacant land sector. I'll talk about why I think that happened. Demand was driven by modest population. It wasn't strong population growth. Household and labor force growth, neither of those were real strong either. Healthcare sector, the healthcare-related job growth was very strong, strongest sector in our local economy. Tourism, city sales, and lodgers tax all rebounded in 2019 after the fire and the drought. We expected that, and that's what happened. So barring any natural disasters, we know what we're talking about. Tourism continues as a strong, I think it's the most necessary segment of our local economy. Low natural gas prices are very difficult for folks who depend on that royalty check from their mineral interest in local minerals. About 10% of our local population depends on a mineral royalty check from their mineral rights in La Plata County. That's a lot of folks. Supply of real estate. Now, I'm talking about supply of affordable real estate because overall, it is starting to edge up, and I'll show you why. As pricing continues to rise, we have fewer affordable units. Total number of transactions was down a little bit from 2019. That's primarily because of the decline in land sales. Those high mortgage interest rates also, though, at the end of 2018 and early 2019, had a big impact on real estate sale activity in early 2019. And then what happened in 2019, those rates went back down, activity picked back up. High construction costs, they've negatively impacted land sale activity. People do the math. They say, I'm going to buy that piece of ground, I'm going to build that house. That total cost is above what I can buy something similar here in some other area. So I'm going to go buy that similar thing and not do that construction. Median material costs nationally have actually softened a little bit, but they're sticky to the downside here locally. By sticky, I mean there's not as much incentive to drop those costs and pass them on to the consumer until that competition drives that cost down a little bit lower. Median home prices rose, resulting in an increased affordability gap between what people can afford and what those houses cost. Bayfield experienced a housing boom last year that was really strong. Bottom line, from my point of view, Plata County is still a very desirable place to live. It's constrained. The addition of new units is choked. And because you don't put enough units, because we're not putting enough units out there, because we're not building enough new units, that population is choked. People have a tough time moving here. They have a tough time. Where are they going to live if they want to move here? Everyone in this room knows that's true. They know someone who wanted to move here, but you know, they couldn't find that spot. Restricted supply, while demand increases, prices are going to continue to rise. So what are those primary forces? Population growth, household growth, and labor force growth. Population growth. I've been doing this, as we've said, for 20 years. And every time I do it, I go to the state demographer, look up the population growth, what it was for the past 10 years, and what they project. Every time I've done it for the last 10 years, it's less than what their projections are. So the same is true now. So they're projecting stronger growth. I have no idea why that is. But what I'll tell you is here we are in 2020, 10 years out from the 2010 census. Those numbers are going to get more accurate in 2020, so we're probably going to know a little bit closer as to what the real story was. The data loses credibility as we get further away from the census date. So there's the population growth in the county, continues to rise. Total household continues to rise. Demand continues to go up. This shows you, here's the net migration in black. Back in 17, for some reason, we had a decline in people that were coming in, moving into the county. But we had a little boomlet here in natural increases, had a few more babies. But last year, our 2018, and that's as close as I'm going to get, that's where the data stops. 2018, the in-migration was pretty darn strong, as strong as almost as it's been in the last 7 or 8 years. Baby increase was about stable.
Our retirees are growing in terms of our population, so second homes we expect will continue to grow. We see a lot of the young retirees that have money, and so where we have more potential is that we want to keep them as they become less healthy. So instead of them being here for 10 years, then moving to family somewhere else, we want to have them age in place. There's a lot of area for healthcare services to grow, in particular for the aging population, because we're all having more birthdays. And so as we age, La Plata County sees a lot of potential for assisted living, independent living, and even nursing home care.
Thank you, Laura, for helping us out here. We'll see Laura again later on. So I talked a little bit about the labor force. Labor force growth has slowed down a little bit here in the last 2 years. So where are they going to live? That vacancy rate, as I'll show you later on, is still pretty low. So if you want to grow that labor force, got to have a place for them to live. Retiree-generated jobs. Think about medical services and services that retirees need. That is the strongest job growth in La Plata County and has been for quite a while. 9% in the last 4 or 5 years annually is really strong growth. And we're all thankful for that because we all have great medical care, and we might be more thankful for it in the next month or so. Who knows? The other issue here is tourism. Tourism remains one of the most important sectors in the local economy, as I said, and that job growth is pretty decent. I don't know why the state demographer says it's not going to grow that strong here going forward. The unemployment rate's very low, 2.3%. It's probably lower than that right now. That makes it hard for a lot of local businesses to hire folks. That's a problem probably nationwide. That's probably not indigenous to La Plata County, but that's challenging for the restaurants or stores that need to hire some of the lower wage folks that just aren't there. There's not enough of them. What else is important? Tourism's important. We can look at it through the lens of sales tax and lodgers tax collections. We can see what's going on out there at the airport. We'll talk a little bit more about the energy industry, Fort Lewis College, and mortgage interest rates. Total tourism was up 2019. We knew it would be. Thought it might be a little stronger than it was. We knew it would be up because of the fire and the drought. It wasn't quite as strong as we thought it was going to be because Mesa Verde was down in January and February because they had a rock slide. One of the things I'm going to track while I'm watching what's going on with the coronavirus is Mesa Verde. And for the first 2 months, they're way up. And they're way up compared to 2019, obviously because of the rock slide, but they're also up because compared to 17, 16, if you go back further, they're up for those first 2 months. So that's a good sign. Hotel occupancy, what's going on? Well, it's been pretty stable here for about 5 or 6 years. Hasn't changed a whole lot. Might change a little bit because we got almost 500 rooms coming online here in the next year or two. I can tell you that, drive around, go down to the end of 2nd Avenue, and you'll see that this AC Marriott, which is down there across from Gazpacho's, it doesn't seem to be moving. There's a hole in the ground and not a lot going on. So of those 475 rooms, we know that at least 200 of them aren't going to come online here in 2020, but that's still 275 that are going to come online. And if you look online right now, if you look on the web, you'll see the Spring Hill Suites is advertising, the Holiday Inn Express is advertising, and the Sleep Inn and Mainstay. All 3 of those are starting to advertise for sometime May, June, July, whenever they think they're going to become available. The airport's a great story. It's been doing very well under Tony Vicari in the last few years. It's really expanded. Had a record year in 2019, up about 3.1%. It's an all-time record high. Has about $300 million in annual economic impact back in 2018. That was a study commissioned by Colorado Department of Transportation. We have daily flights to Dallas, Denver, Phoenix, summer and fall to Chicago, Houston, LA. And they introduced this year a new winter 2020 flight to Houston between January and the end of March. All of that, thanks, Tony, for doing a great job.
So tourism is the largest industry in Durango and La Plata County. It accounts for about 1/3 of the economy, and roughly 18% of jobs are tourism and hospitality related. About 75% of people who buy art in our galleries are out-of-towners. About 50% of people who dine in our restaurants are out-of-towners. About 95% of people who go whitewater rafting are out-of-towners. So it plays a huge role in a lot of industries here. So there have been some shifts in the destination marketing industry, and people are moving away from Convention and Visitors Bureau, Durango Area Tourism Office, aka DATO, towards more consumer-focused names like Visit Durango. We also advertise on social media, of course, digital marketing. We place print ads in magazines, all the traditional means of getting the word out and marketing. If we build a place where people want to visit, we build a place where people want to live. If we build a place where people want to live, we build a place where people need to work and do business and buy real estate, of course. Whether they're visitors, they're buying second homes, they're out-of-towners who are retiring in town or relocating, it can be a huge driver for the real estate market. Durango gets 1.3 million visitors per year. Our goal is to increase that over the next 5 years through the efforts that Visit Durango will be making.
Rachel's the new executive director down at Visit Durango, formerly DATO, and thank you very much to Rachel for her willingness to be a part of this. City of Durango, the retail sales tax rebounded here in 2019. Normal rebound, we thought that would happen after the fire. Lodgers tax also rebounded in 2019, was up about 6 points, almost 7% above 2018. So that was a pretty healthy rebound in lodgers tax. Stronger tourism year and back in 2019. These are some headwinds. This is a low number. This is down below $2 an MCF. I just got the number for March. It's lower. So that's challenging for 10% of the population or more that gets royalty checks from their mineral interests in La Plata County. I don't see that changing a whole lot in the near future. But when you look at it, in terms of the county took a big hit. They suffered here when that price came down and the percentage contribution to the local county tax dollar revenue also went down, peaked out about 66% in 2007, and then it's dropped down to somewhere between 25 and 30% in the last 4 years. However, the county tells us that their budget is now in a healthy position. So they've started to stabilize, and they're going to be able to hire some more staff. They're going to be able to remodel some buildings, perhaps improve some roads. That's a good thing. They've adjusted their budget, and they're moving forward, and it looks like it's a healthy situation. College enrollment has also been pretty stable here in the last 2 or 3 years. We're hoping that's going to turn around. That college is very important to the local economy.
We have the new Center for Innovation that we're launching downtown. We're excited about that. We're taking about 7,000 square feet in the main mall, the whole top left side of the main mall. And that's bringing together several entities. We're bringing together SCAPE, Southwest Colorado Accelerator Program for Entrepreneurs, the SBDC for Southwest Colorado, which is the Small Business Development Center. And of course, we'll have the business school working out of there some. Then also the Southern Ute Indian Tribe. Southern Ute Indian Tribe, like us, they're trying to do things to increase economic development amongst tribal members. And so they're starting their own kind of small business development center, and they'll be based out of the Center for Innovation as well. The main purpose for the Center for Innovation is to diversify our economy, to enhance economic development throughout our region, particularly Southwest Colorado, launch new businesses, grow existing businesses, accelerate businesses. We want to be able to work with people who come in at any stage of business development. You could come in with an idea and we'll help you put it into action, or you could come in with an existing business that's doing really well that you'd like to grow or accelerate, and we'll help you there as well. I think a lot of people around Durango have heard about it but might not know a ton about it, and so we're excited to open our doors and let people come in and learn about what we're doing. And that's a great opportunity for our region and Durango in particular. So the college did have a decrease in enrollment over several years, but it's really great that that decline in enrollment has stabilized. We've seen a little bit of an uptick, and we have a lot of new programs on campus that are meant to increase enrollment. So in the School of Business, we've had several new hires in the faculty. In particular, we've hired a new economist out of Ohio State who's doing a great job, and we're going to be hiring another economist over the next year, which will further bolster our ability to do things like economic impact studies for the community, which we really enjoy doing. We like engaging with the community, and we have a great economics department and economics faculty that allow us to do that.
So those of you who may not know, Steve is the dean of the business school up here at the college, and thanks to Steve for his willingness to participate in this tonight. 30-year mortgage rates. Here they've come down a lot, and they've come down some more recently. Probably every bit as volatile recently as what you've seen in the stock market. Mortgage rates are going up and down, they're bouncing around, and it might be that way for a while, but they're still pretty darn attractive, and they're darn attractive for people who want to buy real estate, and they're darn attractive for people who want to refinance real estate. Start out with the supply side. So the supply started dropping back at the top, where that supply peaked out at the top of the, well, bottom of the Great Recession. And then it started falling. And it's been falling all the way through about 2017. In 2017, and this is all property types, this is residential homes, this is commercial real estate, it's vacant land, townhomes, mobiles and modulars, it's everything. And what has happened here in the last few years is that supply has very slowly started to rise. Problem is, it's not rising necessarily at affordable prices, so you're not seeing it get chewed up quite as fast as you were. I get this information directly from the Wells Group. And this is the number of single-family homes listed for sale inside the city of Durango. And again, you can start to see that this 12-month moving average supply of homes for sale in towns rising. Now, that may not be apparent to all of us because the problem is it's not all at affordable prices. The price is going up, so the supply of homes is going up with that price, so the supply of homes is reflecting higher prices. So we look at the absorption. How fast do these things absorb when they come on the market? A piece of property comes on the market, tends to absorb, the 6 months are considered a market equilibrium. And for the longest time here, 14 through 18, it was pretty stable. It was down around 5 months. But here, as supply started to rise, that absorption started to slow down here in the last year. So you start to see a little bit of uptick in the month's supply. Again, that's not at affordable prices, so we might see more uptick in that. I get this information from Rick Lorenz here at the Wells Group, and the red number here is the number of homes that sold between 200 and 300,000 in that price bracket, and then the green number is 2018, and this brown looking number is 2019, and then this is the current number listed as of December. You can see how low that is. Now, it's cyclically low. The number listed is cyclically low, and it's going to go up, always does. But this number here, here's where your greatest demand is. This number could go up once, it could go up twice, it could probably be 3 or 4 times as high as it is right now, and it wouldn't meet the demand. So there's price pressure. This number here, between 400 and 600,000, that number could go up once, maybe 2.5 times, maybe 1.5 times higher than what it is right here. There's price pressure here below $600,000. That equation changes. When you get north of 600,000, you start to see that price pressure. Supply is higher, price pressure is more diminished. How many homes are listed for sale in those same price brackets? And that's black is 2016, red is 17, green is 18, and blue is 19. And if you look at it carefully, what you start to see here is the supply started to rise. It's a little higher than it's been, except for down here where it's still constrained. So there's significant price pressure down here in this 400 or less price bracket, but that starts to diminish as those prices go up. Number of days on market, and it reflects how quickly properties sell. Put a property on the market on December 1st, does it sell before February 1st, which is 60 days out? So right now, that days on market for homes in town is probably about 130, 135 days on the market. So what does that mean? That means it's on the market for about 4 months. Well, they say equilibrium is about 6 months. Well, that's way up there. So it's still pretty strong. So houses in town aren't sitting on the market very long. They're selling pretty quickly if they're priced right. Let's look at the demand side. I've been tracking this number, this monthly sale number, since 1986. It's never changed. It's always very cyclical. It always peaks. Peak months are August, September, October. And then the bottom months are always right now, January and February. This is typically February of each year, and those are typically August, September, or October. It's happened for whatever that is, 30, 40 years. So Hasn't changed. That's the same thing, by the way, on the listing side. It's very cyclical. But what we look at is it's starting to level out here. This is the trailing 12-month moving average. Looks like it's starting to level out here over the last 2 or 3 years. And sure enough, if you look at it on an annual basis, you see it fell a little bit in 18 and fell a little bit more in 19. Total transactions went down in 19. I'm going to tell you, residential sales didn't go down. Vacant land sales did. And we're going to see that in a little bit. Volume stayed pretty stable. Makes sense. Volume values went up, transactions came down, but the volume only went down a little bit because those sales, that pricing's a little bit higher. We look at the sales by property type. So here in the gray, we got condos and townhomes, and those have been pretty flat for the last few years. Here in the green, we got single-family residential sales. They've been pretty flat for the last several years. In the red, we got vacant land, and this dropped, and it's been going down since 17. It dropped significantly here in the last 2 or 3 years. Commercial is pretty small amount. I always tell people it's about that much of the local market, which is why we don't talk about it a whole lot here in this presentation. That prior slide generated a lot of interest in the Wells Group. So I went back to 1994. These blue bars are land sales. So back prior to 1994, it's my perception that people came here and they wanted to build their idea of a dream. So they bought their land and they wanted to build their custom home. Well, right around that time in 1994, 1995, there was significant changes in economic conditions, primarily fax machines and the internet. And it made it possible for people to move here and not have to work here. So with that change, fewer people were looking to buy and build their idea of a dream. Not to say that's gone away, but more people wanted to come here and play and live and work and move out of that urban environment. And I think that's what this shows, is that drop in land sales reflection of that social change that happened during that time frame. This gives you a little bit more pronounced idea of what's gone on in vacant land sales over the last 19 years. Almost 700 or more a year for that first 7 or 8 years of the 2000s. And then we dropped precipitously into the Great Recession. Land sales just fell out of bed completely. They've recovered, but then they've gone back down here recently. I believe this is a reflection of higher construction costs. I believe folks are challenged to buy that ground and build a new home and match that up with what they see on the market. What part of the housing market has declined? Well, if you look at the lots less than an acre, those are still pretty darn strong. They're hanging in there. Lots 10 to 35 acres, those are still okay. Lots between 1 and 10 acres have fallen quite a bit, and the lots 35 acres, the larger tracts, are falling even more. What are the price points for ground? What sells? What's the strong price point for land sales? Well, if you look at 2019, these green bars right in here show you that, you know, up to and including maybe $200,000 or $300,000 is very strong, but it's also pretty heavily supplied. It's got quite a bit of supply there. So there's not quite as much price pressure on those vacant land pieces that are $300,000 or less. It gets a lot worse as you get up into the higher price points. Sales above $1 million have been going up, and they've been rising, except for vacant land. So what have we talked about a lot tonight? We've talked about the decline in vacant land sales, but residential sales, single-family residential sales, have actually been going up since about 2015. Those sales above $1 million, they continue to climb. Total sales above $1 million, they continue to climb. This gives you an idea here why we don't talk too much about the commercial segment of the local market in this presentation. It's only about 3%. Residential market makes up almost 50% of the total local market. Vacant land makes about 70%. If you combine residential with mobiles and modulars and condos and townhomes, that's the whole kit and caboodle. So that commercial market's pretty small. Let's look at specific areas. As John said earlier, the median price for homes in town went to $500,000 or more here in this past year. So it continues to climb. But if you look at the number of sales, they haven't been way off. They're somewhere between 250 and, I don't know what that number is, probably 280 sales per year for several years. So it's fairly stable. Condominiums have been also fairly stable since 2015 in terms of the number of transactions. Their sale prices are rising. Makes sense. Prices for single-family homes are rising. Some people get priced out of the market. They're going to try to buy some condos if they can. Townhome sales have actually fallen a little bit. Not exactly sure if that's because of supply. I can't tell you why that's happened. Those values have remained fairly stable for the last 3 years. If you look at all the sales of single-family, all residential sales of single-family and condos and townhomes inside town, it's been remarkably stable for 1, 2, 3, 4 years. It really hasn't changed. So when we say number of sales has gone down, it's really not on the residential side, like we've been saying all night. It's on the vacant land side. Let's look outside, look at the rural Plata County market real quick. Rural Plata County, those median sale prices have been rising since 2015 to a spot where they're just over $430,000. You look at the number of homes sold out in the county, that's also been fairly stable. It hasn't changed a whole lot since 2016. Bayfield experienced a little boom here last year. Those sales went from about 61 up to almost 80 in the last year. For Bayfield, 20 units in 1 year increased. That's a big increase. It's a strong increase. They might have a little bit more supply, some vacant lots to bring online. So I expect demand to continue in Bayfield. It's an affordable area. When you look at the median home sale price in Bayfield, it's something less than $350,000 compared to in-town Durango at $500,000 or out in the rural county of, I forget what that was, $430,000. Bayfield's still affordable. Those prices are rising. Demand continues to rise. Their supply is a little bit choked, but I expect that to continue. Forest Lakes, I put Forest Lakes up there because Forest Lakes may be the second or third largest city. It's not really a city, but it's a big subdivision, has a lot of units. It may be the second or third largest area with congestion of units, the supply of units in the whole county. So I like to put it up there and compare it to Bayfield. It's affordable. It's down below $300,000, and sure enough, those are what those houses sell for, and they're affordable houses in La Plata County. So this is the problem, the basic problem with housing affordability. This red line is the median home price. And that median home price back to 2010, I arbitrarily picked that number, started there, and I said, well, what's happened to the median home price since 2010? Well, it's gone up a little bit more than 30%. Well, conversely, what's happening to household income in La Plata County since 2010? Well, it's only gone up a little bit more than 10%. Household income is not rising with house price. Affordability gap widens. So we have this affordability problem. I'm not sure that's a problem and only in La Plata County. That may be in a lot of other desirable places.
So Region 9 has been measuring livable wages since 1999. So what we look at is not just minimum wage, but what somebody needs to earn in order to make it. And we've been looking at that every year, and right now in Durango in particular, it's around $13 an hour. It can be about $12 an hour in Ignacio and Bayfield. And let me qualify that. That's a basic livable wage. So we look at Colorado's self-sufficiency budget, and what that is it looks at, what does it cost for entertainment for the average person, for housing, for clothing, for medical care, and it kind of averages that out. And then if you don't make that wage because the area is too expensive or whatever, then you have to make some choices. You either have more than one job, you don't have health insurance, you may not have an automobile, things like that. So that's what we're trying to look at with livable wage. And then we also look at housing prices. And so in La Plata County, for example, right now 42% of the population cannot afford to buy a home based on their income. So, it's based on your income. That's something we're really trying to work on to make sure that folks who want to buy a home can purchase one in La Plata County, because if you can't afford to buy a home, it's really hard to stay here long term.
Thanks to Laura for her willingness to participate. She did, we actually took a few more clips and put her up here a couple times. She was very helpful. How about up in the North County resort market? Purgatory. I only look at the Purgatory area from those of you who are locals, Needle Store, north. That's what we're talking about. I'm not talking about anything south of Needle Store. So, in large part, it's just the Purgatory base area. And activity's been pretty good up there. Their single-family homes here in the last 2 years have been pretty stable. Their condos market's been stable for the last 3 years. Their land, like everything else, here in the gray, their land sale transactions fell off quite a bit in 2019. Their total transactions been okay here in 2019. I expect to see a little bit more inventory come online here in the next year in Purgatory, which will help them maybe expand their sale activity. Tamaron, the Glacier Club, that's just this 5371 area, but that does take in all of the Glacier Club. Their condos here are in black, and they've been doing well. They've been up a little bit since 17. Their total sales here are fairly level. The Wells Group took over up at the Glacier Club back in about 2017. The number of single-family home sales went up a little bit, and their townhome sales went up again, but here, vacant land sales are down again. What's going on in the region around La Plata County? What are our feeder markets? Our feeder markets are California, New Mexico, Arizona, Texas, and Front Range. That's not to say that we don't get some folks coming here from Florida, we don't get some folks coming here from Illinois, some folks coming from Oklahoma, but I usually don't put them in here unless they meet this 1.5% to 2% threshold. I just don't include them because then it would get too busy, there'd be too many of them. I can tell you that this gold here coming from California, back in about the early 1990s, I forget when Loma Prieta and the Oakland fires were, that number shot up to almost 8%. They came, and a lot of them came. I expect that number from California to grow some more. In fact, I thought it was going to grow by more in 2019 after the fires in California and some of the other financial issues they're faced in California. I expect some of those Californians to move here. It doesn't take a whole lot of them to have an impact. Texas has been pretty stable, despite the decline in the oil and gas industry, energy industry declines. Texas has been very stable. Some of you may know Texas has been a big beneficiary of the exodus out of California. A lot of folks moving into Texas. Some of them may come here. New Mexico has been remarkably stable for the last few years. Arizona is down a little bit. I'm a little surprised the Front Range is down. One of the things you need to know is I get this number from the deed. So if someone moves here and rents and gets a Durango address, I don't know that. I don't know that they came from Denver and then bought a home. The only way I know it is by tracking the deed. I track my information with the local title companies. It all tracks very well, so I'm pretty confident in the numbers that I have, but there is that one little hiccup in this feeder market slide. How do the neighboring counties do? Well, Archuleta County's down a little bit here in the last year. It's been falling, but Archuleta County really boomed for several years. There was very strong uptick in sale activity. Here, Montezuma County was probably down this past year about the same amount that we were down. And then San Miguel County, which is where Telluride, was up quite a bit. I'll add that I just did some work in San Juan County, Silverton. It's remarkable how much activity was in Silverton compared to the last time I was there. It's actually seen a little increase in activity over the last several years. Construction market. So I'm going to start out talking about construction costs and my perspective of why they're so high. Hopefully I don't upset too many people in the room, contractors and that kind of thing, but we're going to start out with the contractors. The number of general contractors in private construction here in Plata County is 27% less than it was prior to the Great Recession. So we don't have as many as we did. There aren't as many of them. The demand is strong, but the supply of those guys is down. Just aren't as many of them to do the job. A lot of those general contractors will complain, and they'll say, well, there aren't enough specialty trade contractors out there. I can't find guys to put the sink in, or I can't find guys to trim out that door. I can't find the plumber. I can't find the electrician. Well, the numbers prove that they're right. That number is 29%, fewer specialty trade contractors in private construction. I get this number from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. I don't have the number for 19, I apologize, but you can tell that that's having some impact on costs. There's just fewer of them. The other piece is materials costs. Materials costs are up as well. Lumber prices have generally risen about 40% since back in 15. That's quite a bit. You can check the futures right now. Those lumber prices down, yeah, I know, they're down a little bit right now. But generally speaking, they've been up over that time frame. That puts price pressure on construction costs. Same is true of the steel futures, the steel prices. Steel prices just soared between 15 and late 18 and early 19. Now they've come back down a little bit, and like I said earlier, they're sticky to the downside. They don't want to come down quite as quickly as they went up. Maybe you see that in the oil and gas industry. You know, the price of oil has gone way down. You might not see it at the pump right away. It's sort of analogous to that. So look at the construction activity. It's fallen a little bit on residential permits. It's been going down for the last 3 years. And the county's been going down. The city's gone down. Really, the only bump we see an uptick is in the town of Bayfield. So town of Bayfield's experiencing a little mini boom over there, particularly given the small size of that town. Total residential units in the city. Now, that line in 2017 represents the Rocket apartments. 200 of those, the first 200 of those are the Rocket apartments. And I point that out because what it does is it shows the importance of density, shows the importance of adding units into the mix. You need to add density in order to meet the demand or prices will rise. And we just didn't do it here in the last few years. Those things, the Rocket was permitted in 17, but they probably didn't start renting until 19. So you're not going to see that impact from those units that were permitted in 17 until 19. So we're not going to see any impacts going forward of a great number of units here because it didn't happen. So we're not going to see those impacts for another at least 2 years. You got to start that today to impact us 2 years from now. Single-family homes permit out in the county. I went all the way back to 1976. And we had a long, strong period here from about 1992 till about 2006 where we were doing north of 300 units out in the county. Well, right now, we're doing south of 200 for a long time. We're just not building enough units to meet that demand, so prices will rise. Now, I'm not saying they're going to rise and go through the roof all the time, but generally speaking, long-term, prices are going to rise unless you create supply. This number right here, 2017, 200 of those units is the rocket. Take those 200 units out, and what do you have? You have something less than 300. You have something in here. So without that rocket, that one project, that one 200-unit project, without that, we're not doing what we were doing back between 2000 and 2007, just not creating that supply. Remember I told you the rocket was built in 17. You're not going to see reaction in the market until 19 or 20. Well, we saw a little reaction. See that uptick, a little uptick in that vacancy rate. It went a little higher because those units came to bear, they were available. We're not building right now, and it didn't build enough in the last couple of years. I think that number may go back down. And I'm not exactly sure what we're going to do, but we've got to build some more units if we want to meet that demand. Total commercial permits issued, it's a pretty small number compared to what we've been talking about. But if you went back into the 1980s, when I first started working, in the 1990s, this number was up around 80, 90, 100 permits. And what happened at the end of the 80s is we severely overbuilt that commercial market. The S&L crisis came along, markets tanked, the economy tanked, commercial market was way overbuilt locally, and we had to chew into that supply for a long time. Well, I'm going to tell you, we're not overbuilding that commercial market right now. It's not happening. Primarily, one of the reasons is construction costs are so high that buying that ground, building that commercial project is very challenging and make the economics work. If you look at annual permits, they've been pretty stable. Most of those are miscellaneous permits. Most of us know someone who's bought an existing house because they looked at that equation where they were going to buy the land and build the house, and then they bought that existing house, and that existing house didn't meet their needs. So they said, well, I got to remodel this. I got to put in some new electricity lines. There's not enough outlets here for all my cell phones. Or I need to fix that kitchen. And so you see a lot of miscellaneous remodel permits and that kind of thing, a lot of electrical permits. And that's the bulk of what's going on here. So we're going to wrap it up. What do you expect in 2020? I believe, and I continue to believe, that tourism is still the #1 economic force in La Plata County. What's going to happen in 2020? Boy, I have no idea. Right now, I don't think anyone in this room has any idea. But that increased hotel room inventory is going to have a negative impact regardless of that virus. It's going to have an impact on hotel rates for hotel owners. Hotel rates, the rate war, trust me, has already begun. I've already seen it. These vacation rentals, that's a big deal. There's a lot of them, and it's pretty strong. And when you look at how many of them are, and I've looked at the numbers. I've got numbers that show me what the revenue is from those vacation rentals. I've got numbers for Airbnb locally. I've got numbers for HomeAway and VRBO locally. The revenue that those 1,000 or 1,200 units generate is equal to about 4 of our hotels, 4 100-unit hotels. It's a big deal. The county's catching on. They're going to start trying to tax it, and I think the city may start to do that too. The demand, modest population and household growth is going to continue. We're going to continue to see demand, but that supply isn't going to be enough, especially at the affordable inventory, especially at that price. You're not going to see enough. So that's going to keep the number of transactions in check. Mortgage interest rates, need I say more? They're remarkably low, very attractive for everybody. I think this construction issue with costs are going to continue. I don't know how they bring more employees to town without a place for those employees to live. So those costs, those contractors are going to be hard pressed to meet that demand. So those prices are going to stay high. This is a problem, no doubt about it. We live on the edge of the San Juan Basin. We live in energy-dependent part of the world. And this is going to have an impact on it. It's going to have a negative impact on local royalty checks. But there's less of an impact on the county government going forward, and that's a good thing. So, thanks to all these folks that sponsor this every year. Really appreciate all you do for us. It's a great thing that these guys put this on. Thanks to Preston Benson. He does the videos every year, and he does a great job. Thanks to Sam Rose, Nathan Morris, and Derek Dapp with Web Services. Nathan is sitting back here behind this screen, and he does a lot to make this work and make this happen. He puts this together for me. Special thanks to all the local businesses. I call around town, I email around in the county, and I end up with a lot of information that some people just don't get. And I want to let everybody know that I keep that under wraps, I keep it confidential, but I also really appreciate that they're willing to share with me. So that I couldn't do this without that. And then thanks to the forecast committee, the Wells Group helps me. And I get together with them, I start getting together with them back in December and January. And I tell people the realtors are really on the front lines. They see what's going on in the market. They know what's going on right now. So I get to listen to what's their perception, and I talk to them over the next 2 or 3 months, and that helps me with what I present here. So these folks do a lot of work, and they've really helped me. In particular, I make a lot of mistakes, and there's several of these folks on here, Chelsea and Chris, that put a lot of time into going through all the really boring material that I put together and make sure that it's correct and make sure I haven't made too many mistakes, and thanks to them. And that's all we got. Thanks to John and Jim. Thanks to all of you for coming. I know it's a little challenge to get in the group, but we really appreciate that you came out tonight. Thank you.